think the lizard's gone. Damn it. Morning, guys. It's a Saturday morning. How good is that? I love the weekend, but I don't really have any work to do today, so I guess I may as well smash out a work-related video, I guess. Now, being a physio, you probably would think, hey, you probably see a lot of runners with injuries, and actually, yeah, you'd be correct. Bone breaks, muscle tears, all kinds of stuff runners come in with. Sometimes really complex stuff too that they've just ran through for like 6 months. And generally speaking, 90% of those runners are gonna get better by resting and doing a rehab program that's gonna gently improve their capacity until they're back to running full strength. Except one specific injury. Like, this injury is the most annoying one to have and also the most annoying one to treat. It's by far the most tedious rehab process ever, and I'm gonna try and make sense of it for you so that you don't have to deal with it for like 9 to 12 months. So let's talk about tendons, and also let's talk about my new shoes. They're pretty sick, hey? Now, tendons attach muscle to bone so that the muscle can move the bone or the joint. Now, interestingly, it was previously thought that tendons were like these innate, stiff things that didn't really do anything other than help the muscle to transmit power. But actually, they're like these elastic coil energy storage systems that actually stretch quite a lot. Take your Achilles, for example. I'm gonna show you really quick. When you step on the ground, you probably utilize about 30-ish degrees of ankle motion in this direction, but the muscle length of the calf barely changes. This is because the length of the tendon actually stretches out to accommodate this elastic load. Tendons are energy storers and releasers, and this is why they have so much grief. Now, acute tendons generally feel much worse than they actually are. What generally will happen is that you'll load the tendon during a run and it will flare up and it will get big and fat. And when you feel the tendon with your own fingers, it will feel chunky and boggy and gross, basically. Normally, when a tendon is loaded, the structure is broken down, and the building up process over the next day or two is what makes that tendon stronger. But if that breakdown is too much, your body needs to actually repair that quite a lot, and so that's what that puffing up is. The cross-sectional area of the tendon increases in size to repair, but also accommodate the load that you're still putting on it. So it's really reactive, really pissed off, and it's letting you know that you need to rest. It's like a 2 to 3 week process before you get back to building up your running again. But what happens when you don't let it actually fully repair and rebuild like pretty much most runners do? Well, you enter the next phase of tendon pathology, and I'm gonna write it all out on the board because it's really interesting, and it's by Jill Cook, who's also an Australian. I just gotta find the whiteboard. Oh, it's out there. So here we have that reactive tendon cycle that I was talking about. If we just rest, then we can come back to a healthy tendon tissue. But if we don't, for a long period of time, the attempt of the body to repair this tendon fails. Essentially, this tendon has failed to heal because it hasn't been given enough time to actually rebuild itself back to its normal tendon strength. The hell am I doing? Now, this sounds pretty awful, right? And the most common thing to do at this point for most people is to say, f this running stuff, I'm just gonna rest. But this is only gonna make the issue worse. What we actually need to find is the appropriate level of loading that's gonna allow this tendon to get better. And until we do that, this tendon's never gonna get better. Like, if I think of it like this, in the reactive phase, your body has dropped off all the materials ready to repair this tendon. But because you kept running on it, you didn't actually give the body any chance to use that materials to make this tendon strong again. And so the materials are just sitting there doing nothing. It's like a construction site in Australia. Everyone's standing around doing nothing. What we have to do is get to work and load this tendon and get these materials put where they need to be. Imagine on one end of the spectrum, we have running, the most taxing of movements for tendons. And on the other end of the spectrum, we have standing still, doing nothing. There will be a point along the spectrum where loading the tendon at that specific difficulty will elicit strengthening. And just above this is gonna be a point where this is gonna actually cause disrepair in your tendon, and it's probably gonna make it sore as fuck. So what we have to do is break this load down into a systematic method so that we can go and get good load every time and avoid bad load. And there's certain principles that I go by. The first one is that we're not doing anything more than 2 out of 10 pain. The way that I describe 2 out of 10 pain is that it's not painful and it's not quite uncomfortable, but you're aware of that issue in your tendon. The next way is understanding what kind of muscle contractions are going to be good for that tendon at that particular time. For example, isometrics, which is when you're doing static holds, and eccentrics, when you're gently lowering the body into some sort of range of motion, are gonna be pretty good. Anything that's really fast and really dynamic and plyometric is gonna be way higher on that continuum and is probably gonna flare up your tendon, but you're gonna get there eventually. We're gonna start with some easy stuff. Cool, so step one, we're gonna focus on the easiest stuff possible, getting strength in safe ranges of motion. And then we're gonna progress those ranges of motion into more and more provocative ranges of motion. Why am I saying that so many times? And then eventually, once we have full range of motion with no pain and we're able to crank out some pretty good strength stuff, we're gonna start to add in some plyometrics. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go outside and give you an example on the Achilles, because Achilles is probably the most common. Yeah, let's do that. So for an Achilles, for example, I would start someone with isometrics right up in the top of their calf range and progress to having a heel off the step. This is because the further that the heel drops, the more strain is put on the tendon, so we can progress that over time. Then, when we feel comfortable with this, we can progress to doing single leg work. And once we're maintaining that 2 out of 10, with this single leg work, we can add in some plyometrics. Plyometrics, we can start with a singular jump and landing, and then progress to doing multiple jumps and landing, and then speeding up the ground contact time so that we're getting off the ground quite quickly. Then when we're ready, we can do single leg hops and landing, going through the same progression until boom, we are ready to start running once again. How good. Sweet, so we're all experts now. Epic. But there's one more thing that I want to talk about, and that's when you have an acute and a chronic pathology in the same tendon. It's very common. This is how it will present. You'll have flare-ups every couple of months with the same tendon issue, like every 6 months, just the tendon just comes back and back and back. That is a reactive tendon that also has some chronic pathology inside it. And if you have that, and that sounds like something that you're dealing with, you need to go to a physio or a sports doctor and get that sorted out. But I can't help you with that over the internet. Very complex. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Bye.